Good afternoon, everyone. We are here with the Provincial Minister of Infrastructure, Kinga Surma, who is visiting Grimsby today to make a large announcement that will affect the whole area and Grimsby especially, and we'll get to that. But Kinga is the relatively new Minister of Infrastructure, coming over from Transportation, and that was about a month ago, Kinga, and you mentioned that one of your first tasks was dealing with the content of the magazine in front of you. Maybe if you could just outline the Infrastructure Ministry's effect on that process, which is covered in today's paper.
Yes, so actually one of the first decision-making points as a new minister, 3 weeks on the job, but this was during the second week, was to work with IO to basically begin the procurement process for the West Lincoln Hospital. And actually that very same day, MPP Oosterhoff found out that I needed to give direction to IO and called me immediately and said, "You're getting this, you need to sign it, you need to give direction to IO because we need to get this hospital going."
I'm sure you never hear from Sam about the hospital.
Well, there's a few things I've worked with Sam on, but that very same day he knew it was coming, and so he just said, "I know you're a new minister, but please sign this letter. We need to get going," and so I did, and he was certainly excited about it.
Great. And that sets the RFP process in motion, and those, I guess, will come back towards the end of the year and move on from there. I know that the process after the RFPs come in is usually 4 to 6 months. I know that various aspects of that whole process before you're in IO have been streamlined, to say the least.
Yes.
And I'm not that familiar with how. I know there's lots of detail to go through on those bids, but do you know if there's any way to, or do you have any anticipation that last leg of the journey for West Lincoln may be expedited or shortened, or any 4 to 5 months as opposed to 6, that kind of thing?
Well, certainly one of the things that has caused me great grief in my life I'm a very impatient person. I like to get things done right away. And actually, when I was at the Ministry of Transportation responsible for the GTA, we finally got our subway expansion built in Toronto. And one of the things that we looked at was, how do we build faster and more efficiently? How do we conquer those barriers that tend to slow down? So that's something that I will be looking at the Ministry of Infrastructure. But in saying that, throughout the procurement process, it is important that we get very good quality bids that come in, ones that are financially and technically feasible. Because if you don't get good quality bids come in, then that could cause problems down the road. But I will certainly take a closer look at the hospital investments that we've made, and if there is a little bit of room to expedite, then that's something that I will take on.
Yeah. Well, just having seen the 3 bidders that were on the 3 company or 3 team qualified list, there's some high quality corporations and companies in there, so I don't think you'll have any problem getting quality bids from those guys.
Absolutely, but we also have to verify.
There's lots.
Verify the information, verify the financials, and all those things. But if there's one thing that I've been able to do, as any
taxpayer would want you to.
Yes, of course, respect taxpayer dollars. But if there's one thing that I've tried my best in terms of being an associate minister, is to really expedite the work, because I know people want to see results.
Certainly. Next year marks the 25-year anniversary for the whole process. So, yes, when you talk about expediting, there's many that would argue whether it's been expedited, but it certainly has of late. So, let's move on to why you're here today. Maybe you could just outline what your announcement was this morning at Peach King Center.
Absolutely. Well, I'm here today because, again, Sammy called me. He knew that there was some good news coming to the community, and he insisted that I come with him to celebrate with his community. But $16 million for the Peach King Community Center to renovate, to expand, gym, indoor walking track, which I know people are very excited about, as well as many multi-purpose rooms. So I think it's a very key, very important investment, especially coming out of COVID, to give something back to the people so that they can exercise and be healthy, and also good for mental health. So I know Sammy was very excited today.
Yep. And I had a chance to speak with Sarah Sweeney, who's the Director of Recreation. I think she cited 12 or 14 different features to it. It's not just the gymnasium or the walking track. There's quite a bit going on there. And it is part of their master plan that they've done. It was one of those programs where the municipality has to have their homework done, timed with government dollars being available, and it was ready to go. So it's nice that when the municipalities have their homework done.
Yes.
Yeah. So with IO, is the funding for that coming from a particular program, or is it, sort of a COVID relief package, or?
It's through our community, our strategic community infrastructure fund. So one of our most, I would say, competitive streams in ISIP was the community culture rec stream. And I'm a big believer in spending as much as possible in infrastructure. I believe that is what taxpayers ultimately want. But we had so many applications. And so we worked really hard to make sure that we found additional dollars so that we can provide as many investments across the province as necessary.
Without saying how many were awarded and how many came in total, or you can, but what percentage would you say were awarded? It was just to give the people an idea.
So,
excuse me.
So approximately 1,000 applications came in for that one stream of $1 billion, joint federal, provincial, and as well as the municipal portion. And so obviously you can meet all of those applications. Unfortunately, I believe 76 or so were nominated to the federal government. There's a few that are remaining that we're waiting for. But that wasn't enough. And so we worked very hard to get that additional provincial dollars so that we could invest in communities, especially coming out of COVID.
And is it a shared cost situation, or was it just as much as the province could afford to dole out on that particular project?
It's just provincial funding for this one.
Because I know Sarah mentioned the total cost was 21.5, I believe, is what they budgeted. She was going to confirm that, but a bit more on top.
So 60 million is from the province, and the rest is from the municipality.
Right. Okay. So you are on a tour of sorts with some of these announcements. Is that is this early in the process of that, or is it something that's going to roll out over the summer?
Well, there are some projects that the ministry still has to announce that have been approved. But certainly I want to get it on the road as much as possible. One of the things that I enjoy the most is going to different communities and municipalities across the province. I come from a Toronto riding, and I know that the province is much bigger than just Toronto proper, so I try to travel as much as possible. And also whenever a member wants me in the riding, when they have something that they want to talk to me about or show me or emphasize its importance, then I always try to make the time.
Well, if you're back to announce anything in Lincoln or West Lincoln, we'd be glad to have you back.
I would love to come back.
And do the exact same thing. Anytime you give money to the area, we'll open the door for you, gladly. Is there anything else you want to mention just about the process or the program, or?
Just that I think that coming out of COVID, it's really important to make these investments. I think it's important to improve people's quality of life, and the best way to do it is through investments like in public transit or community centers. And certainly this spot will bring people together after COVID, which I think is really important because I know it's been a really, really difficult last year and a bit. And so I look forward to coming back and celebrating.
Great. Thank you for your time today. We're just going to do a quick chair change, and MPP Oosterhoff will be joining me. Hello, everyone. We did some magic, and here's Sam. Sam, you heard some of the background that we went over with the minister, and maybe you just pick up from there on, I know during the presentation this morning, you talked about how important it is to bring provincial scale dollars to the local community. Maybe you might want to just start with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I believe that Niagara West, until fairly recently, was to a certain extent neglected by the provincial government. We didn't see many projects coming into this area, we hadn't seen the amount of investment that was needed, especially as we've seen a hugely growing population in the area. The West Niagara region is one of the fastest growing, right? I mean, obviously that brings growing pains as well. And I know here in Grimsby, there's been a lot of conversation about that. But one of my commitments when I ran was to make sure that we got local funding and that we were able to see some of these key projects, whether it was the hospital, whether it's, even the changes to the lights on coming off the highway, or things like this.
The hospital certainly a different scale because it's such a regional impact as opposed to.
But it's still part of bringing those funds at a time when it's needed just to deal with both the growth and also the fact that for a long time we didn't get enough funding. So it was very, very satisfying. But again, all of these things, they don't happen on their own. There's a lot of people who are involved, a lot of community people.
A lot of time. I know that this particular project is 8 months to today, roughly.
Yeah.
Was early fall, I think.
Yeah. When
that process started.
Yeah. No, it was already even prior to that there were applications under the Investing in Canada program, the ISIP fund, and that was the one that she mentioned, right? So there were over $10 billion worth of applications for $1 billion worth of projects. So obviously, unfortunately, everyone got those projects, but there was an ability with the new Investing in Communities project fund to be able to see this allocation. So very thankful to Premier Ford for recognizing it. We spoke about it a number of times. The former minister and Minister Surma as well, just recognizing the need in this area and coming forward and providing a significant amount of cash.
Any cash is good cash.
Any cash is good cash, exactly.
Yes, sir. With the Peach King project in particular, we mentioned some of the aspects with the gym and the walking track and such, but just what the minister mentioned about the activity level, and not necessarily something to look forward to, but something for people to get out and put some focus on in a positive way as things start to turn around.
Yeah, even looking at some of the other community infrastructure in the area, it is becoming aged, right? Think of the Livingston Senior Center. There's just different settings where people are participating in various activities, but there's not really a central node the way that we want to see. So just from even an efficiency perspective, but from families that are able to, drop their kids off to go play hockey, and one kid might do something else in a multi-purpose room. Perhaps the parents will go for a walk around the walking track. This will provide a lot of opportunity for that relationship of an ecosystem of community services in a really modern facility, one that's going to be energy efficient, that's going to be green, that's going to be reflective of what the needs of the community are, more senior services, and I think that's good news, especially as I said, just the growth. But also the potential that there is for, especially post-COVID, people getting out and being able to mingle again and have those experiences.
Yep. And just to go back to the hospital a little bit, the timing was good with today's announcement. In the paper this week is the information that we talked about with IO signing off on the RFP. Maybe you could just touch on that.
Yeah, so as everyone knows, it's been quite a process, but to get that RFP signed by the minister, one of the very first actions that she took, we spoke early in the day, and then by the afternoon she had signed off on it, which was fantastic. So very thankful to Minister Surma. But that is an intense process. I mean, you're talking hundreds of millions of dollars in accountability in modern infrastructure for healthcare. And so to see that RFP now out the door, knowing there's about 6 months to get that feedback, and then hopefully we'll see the minister sign off on the final bid very rapidly. I know it goes for review. We want to see those shovels in the ground next spring, and that's I think it's important to back up and put it in perspective. You mentioned next year's 25 years. I always say, I was born when that was going on in 1997, but really this particular project started in 2018, right?
Oh, I meant yes.
And that's something I think people forget, because I know I've had people say, well, it had better be here. This started in 1997, but that project got stopped in 2012. It was canned, and so restarting
stopped a couple times. Yeah.
Stopped a couple times, and so to restart, to get from 2.5 years ago from initial announcement to RFP out the door is pretty fantastic.
It's been about 2/3 of the normal time cut off the process.
Yeah, it's remarkable.
It is. Yeah. So I know too that one thing I learned in this process with these bids is that the successful bidder has to finance the entire project until completion.
Yeah.
And then it's like having an occupancy permit. The builder doesn't get the money until the whole project is done and keys are handed over. And so
it's a good incentive to keep things moving on time,
Yeah.
on budget for them, right?
and the minister mentions that assessing their financial viability is part of it, because you don't want to get in deep and then somebody doesn't financially make it. And oof.
Yeah.
So no, but that's just part of the process.
Yeah.
Unique part of the process with a
Yeah.
tender like this.
And that's also why there's such, I think, large teams that are combined. If you look at the pre-qualifying teams, right, there's 3 different teams. Those are heavy hitter names. Those are big
They
companies that do a lot of big infrastructure, and they have that capacity. I know I've had people say, well, we need to have a local company build it. I'm sure that there will be local people who are involved in that process, and subcontractors and things, but we really do need a large capacity, both fiscally and from a planning and fulfillment aspect, to make sure that this is happening. And these are world quality builders who are going to make a fantastic hospital.
Agreed. Is there anything else you want to mention about either
aspect?
aspect?
I want to again acknowledge Sarah Sweeney and her team's work to go into today's announcement. I want to thank the Grimsby Council for endorsing that support, and again thank Premier Ford for the conversations, the phone calls he took from me on this issue, and Minister Surma to make sure that we got to this day. It's exciting, and I think within the next couple of years, as we get those shovels in the ground and the gates open, it's going to be exciting to see all the families that are able to take advantage of it, and the seniors. And I'm sure many people will spend many hours there.
Great. Then
Thanks.
They won't have to go to West Lincoln when it's done.
Exactly.
That's it. Thanks very much for your time today, Sam.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.